pinch pot is important to the success of your project. This is how you make a pinch pot. You start with a sphere or a ball of clay. You can either leave it on the table or hold it in your non-dominant hand. Take your thumb and press your thumb down into the center of the sphere. You don't want to go all the way through. You can see about how deep my hole is here. It went all the way past my knuckle. So I'm in there pretty deep, but I didn't go all the way through. Okay. Now once you have that hole, you are going to want to hold this in your hand, put your thumb back in, and take these 4 fingers and push them together, all together touching. Use those fingers to press against your thumb in a pinching motion. That's why it's called a pinch pot. So those fingers are pinching against my thumb, which is inside the sphere. I pinch a little bit and I turn the pot slightly. Pinch and turn, pinch and turn, pinch and turn. The reason I'm turning is to keep the pot balanced and even. You can see how it's starting to open up inside. The hole that I had made with my thumb is getting larger. The walls of this pinch pot are still quite thick. I don't want them to be that thick. Ideally, they're going to be about as thick as my pinky finger or maybe your 4th finger, the ring finger. So I need to continue to pinch and turn. Just going slowly, making small turns. If I don't turn it evenly, I end up pinching one area and not pinching another area. That will cause the walls of my pot to be uneven. The thickness should be pretty even all the way around. Notice if you start to get some little cracks, you can smooth them with your finger. If that doesn't work, you could always get your finger a little bit wet and smooth over those cracks. I'm going to continue to go, pinching and turning. Now I'm moving a little bit faster. And I want you to notice when it's in your hand that your fingers can feel where it's still too thick and where it still needs some pinching. Let your fingers guide you. Okay, so there's a basic pinch pot. It's nice and strong. It's still a little bit thick. Can go a bit more. Okay. Now if this pot was going to sit on a table, I would make sure that the bottom of the pot was flattened against the table so it would sit solidly. But if I want it to be a curved pot all the way around, if I'm turning it to turn it into an owl, or if I'm turning it upside down to use it as a cupcake top, I'm going to want it to be more rounded and not have a flat top. So in that case, I can just use my fingers, again, to just kind of push where I need to from inside and from outside to make sure that it stays rounded like this one. Okay. Now here are some common problems that could happen. If you keep pinching for too long, your walls will get too thin. When they're too thin, they lose strength. So you can see the more I go, the wider my pot is getting and the thinner the sides are getting. So if I keep going, pinching, sometimes I see this happen to pots. It starts to get out of shape. Can you see that? It's been pinched too much, especially along the rim or the top of the pot. You don't want to do that. Sometimes that can be fixed by me. If you let me know that that happened to you, I can take a look at it and I can possibly use a tool to cut off some of the unevenness along the rim, or if it's getting too wide, like this one's getting really wide, it's too big, sometimes I can make a slit in it with a tool and sort of overlap it back together in some spots to try to fix it again. So don't automatically just crumple your sphere or your pinch pot into a ball because you think you did it wrong. Sometimes it can be fixed. You see how that's starting to get smaller? And then I can show you how to smooth that so nobody sees that it had been corrected. Okay? The other thing that can happen is when you don't push your thumb in far enough at the very beginning. So here's another sphere. Okay. If you only push your thumb in a little bit, like see that one went didn't even cover my knuckle as far as how far I pushed my thumb in. And you start pinching, what happens here is you've got this really, really thick bottom. The bottom is really thick. You can tell by touching it. But the sides are starting to go. So what happens is someone will keep pinching and turning and pinching and turning, but their pot's not getting very big because all of the clay down here has not been pinched. The way to fix that is to get your thumb back in there, to push in deeper without going through, and then pinch lower in the pot to get to the clay that's all bunched up down there that you missed the first time. So if the bottom is too thick, that can be fixed as well. So you can let me know if you're feeling that with your fingers, and I can usually see it as I'm walking around and checking. That's something that's usually pretty easily fixed as long as you don't go too far. If your pinch pot really gets messed up, I don't want you to just ball it up and crumple it and start over. The clay will be somewhat dry from handling from your hands, and it won't make a good sphere. And also, when you just crumple it up, you tend to trap air bubbles in there. And if there are air bubbles in your pot, they can explode in the kiln. The air bubble expands, the piece shatters inside the kiln when it's getting heated up. So if your pinch pot is beyond repair and I can't help fix it, I would end up giving you a new sphere to start over. But I don't want to have to do that if I don't have to. I'd rather see what you've done and see if it can be corrected without starting from scratch.